Welcome to the Edinburgh City Supporters Club podcast. We hope you enjoy the show.
Well, hello everybody and welcome to the latest edition of the Edinburgh City Supporters Club pod. Should I also forgot the usual, the very unofficial Edinburgh City Supporters Club pod. It is me again, the Right Reverend Bobby Love, joined Mr. Rooney and Mr. Monk's Alan Creef. How are we doing, lads?
Very good, mate. Thank you. Very good.
Yeah, absolutely grand. And I thought, as you missed it, unofficial. I thought we'd been taken over by the club there, and they've had enough of our brought them under their wing. But still very much unofficial.
Yeah, we're going to keep that status for as long as possible, I think. Unless, of course, the club want to bring us onto the payroll and give us some money. That would be delightful. So if you're listening, Chairman Brown, happily give us a couple £100 a week each. No questions asked. But while we're on the subject of chairman, part of the reason for tonight's pod is kind of two-pronged, and we'll get into the second part a little bit later on. The first one is to talk about the continual shutdown, lack of information, really just how it's affecting us all. I will go last on this because I had my say last week doing another media role with our friends at Pure Football, doing a kind of online panel talking about it. So I'll come to Ali first, because obviously Rooney gets his football fix elsewhere. Ali, how have you found it the last few weeks? What's your thoughts? Just give us a good Mr. Monk's moans.
I think it's just, everybody feels it. I think frustration is the word that's used for everyone. And there's psychological reasons, but people use football as a bit of an escapism. We all have, if we have a busy week at work, or studying, or doing whatever it is we're doing, or looking after family, you've got that escapism where you go and you just don't think about anything else for an hour and a half or 2 hours. You're just there watching the football. You're enjoying it. You're in amongst people that you know, letting off some steam. If you're me or other couple, and it's just that real frustration that we've not been able to get. Feels like forever ago that we beat Airdrie in the cup, and it's just been dragging on. And I don't think we've actually had one new bit of information since then, as far as I can tell. And I don't think we've been kept in the dark about it as fans. I just don't think there is any information there. I don't think there's any guidance. I don't think there's no route forward for this. We're recording tonight just after the First Minister's statement for the very first steps of lockdown. Football is obviously not covered in that at all, as far as I could see. And I think no news is probably bad news in this scenario, because we're just about out of time. And what we're 27-game season we're going to have. At best, could we maybe get 18? But then you're thinking about the players. Then the players have not been training, obviously, because they're all on furlough, so you can't go training. Okay, some of them will have been keeping fit where possible, but all you can really do is exercise in your house, which is a challenge if you don't have the space. They're not Premiership players. They don't have all these mansions with a gym and a pool and things like that. Trying to get out running or something. We've been under a foot of snow for the last week or so. So you've got to give players maybe 6 weeks or something to get back up to speed in terms of training. Otherwise, it'll be a farce. Players will get injured. If guys have got physical jobs, they get injured playing football. Does that affect their ability to earn on a building site or something like that? You've got to be fair to the players. So I think it just feels like it's just going to be cancelled. I think it's going to be null and void. I can't see any other way around it. I guess maybe the discussion then moves on to actually, does that mean we try and do something different next season? And I'll be a big fan of summer football. It's something I'm in favour of as well, but it doesn't even feel like that's on the table, which is a frustration. Again, there just seems to be no route out of this for us. And I think actually, just you mentioned there about really getting this football fixed in other places. Very interesting to hear what he's got to say, because I've found watching football, and I watch football from all around the world and things, as a kind of a casual observer, I found it quite difficult to watch without any fans. I find it really, really soulless. It's not for, if this was what football was like all the time, I certainly wouldn't pay £30 a month to Sky or whatever it is, and an X amount of pounds to BT every month to get my football fix. I find it's quite grim, to be honest. It really is. It's got that friendly match vibe to it, and So yeah, it's tough. Very, very much missing football. I suppose the only thing I would say is it does seem like next season we might be able to get in properly and be able to be at games. But I still think there should be a conversation about what does next season look like, you know, and let's be creative. Let's try and sell Scottish football a bit here. Is there talk of maybe the two lower leagues combining, having one league of 20? I know that might be, you know, two home, you know, playing teams twice instead of 4 times, something like that, just to get a bit of energy back in amongst, get people's excitement back about Scottish football. We'll come back with a big bang, because I just don't see everyone will limp over the finish like here at all. You know, 18 game season. 27 was a push, 18's surely for me is a nonsense.
I would probably tend to agree with that. I think 18 also probably gives the SPFL their sport integrity get out for making sure the pyramid doesn't happen again, which for me, to have 2 curtailed seasons and therefore the pyramid the pyramid being curtailed as well, I think is absolutely it's an abhorrent state of affairs, really. Yeah. It shouldn't have happened last season. Like we've spoken about before in previous pods, the ideal scenario would have been at least finishing last season into the summer, knowing there was a good chance there was going to be a second wave or perhaps a third wave, and it was going to be difficult to finish another season. And so it's transpired. I mean, it doesn't make anybody feel good saying, "Well, we told you so." But I think it was such an obvious kind of way things were going to transpire that to not look and have that kind of foresight that this might happen really showed up like a naivety, I think. But then again, I know we're in a pandemic, it's different, there's new things to go, but there showed a real kind of lack of creativity, I suppose, like you said, about what possible solutions we can have going forward. I mean, even now, 18 games, I can understand that. There's talking 18 games and then a split in 4 games. 22 games coming back in the middle of March. It's still going to be pretty tough, especially because the championship season finishes at the end of April. Then you're going to have maybe 2 or 3 weeks of a gap. Who's second bottom in the championship might not be happy with that because their players are then going to be out of commission for a couple of weeks, you know, and so on and so forth. And all these kind of logistical arguments and problems arise. It looks like going into summer football or into the summer's a non-starter by all accounts. They're not interested in that. I can see to some extent why. But then again, that goes back to the argument, well, why has summer football never been considered? Or at least, even for this season, when they knew there was going to be probably a second wave, even to market the leagues better, you've got nothing on during the summer apart from rugby league, really. Obviously, the Euros would have been there, but that wouldn't have mattered too much, I wouldn't have thought. Even if you suspended the leagues for 2 or 3 weeks, won't matter. What does it matter? But yeah, it's been a difficult set of circumstances. It's frustrating. I fully agree with you. Watching football on the television for me is absolutely dull. I'm not a huge consumer of football like I used to be anyway, but I think since the pandemic started, I find it really, really difficult. No fans. The players don't. I mean, I spoke about that with Danny Denham with the online panel a couple of weeks ago. I mean, he made mention of sometimes it's some of the players need the fans to give them a wee bit of a G up, so to speak. What we'd probably call a foot up the arse. So I can see why some players maybe need that wee bit extra kind of oomph for the stands. Of course, there'll be other players that are probably absolutely delighted there's nobody there, you know, effing and jeffing in their ear and telling them how shite they are. So that's maybe enhanced their performance. But I think on the whole, players like having crowds, whether it just be 10 fans in their dug or something at the side of the pitch, at least they've got something there that they can hear. But I think that's where we are at the minute. Rooney, what's your thoughts on it all?
I don't know, to be honest. It's when it first all started off and it was all the I was like, great, there's games every night, batter on. And then you just realise that you go back to what you were like before. You only really watch games that you're interested in, or, you know, teams that you're interested in. Like, I had no interest whatsoever in watching Brighton and Hove Albion and Crystal Palace play football last night. Although Brighton maybe put the ball on the deck and they're pretty to watch, I have no interest in watching that. You know, like watching Burnley, like, oh God, I had to watch Craig Levine's teams. That's just bad. Just 10 men behind the ball and knock it long. It's horrendous. So I don't get your fix in other places. It's an Edinburgh City podcast. That's just as bad. But I think probably goes back to what we spoke about in one of the other podcasts about accountability as well. And there's not, like we're saying about no fans in or anything like that. It's more of a, to me, it's a bit like going through the motions. It's like we have to do this, we have to play. Maybe different if you're top of the league or something like that, or or you're trying to, like this team's trying to win stuff, or like the Champions League's on the night and stuff. It still won't be the same for them, but they're going for it. But if mid-table mediocrity, it's going to seem even worse than what it normally is, because it's like, well, I don't have any fans to get annoyed that we're only going to finish table, so I can't, I've got nobody to worry about. I can just, I can go through the motions. So I'm a bit disappointed in the whole, when it come out about the home and away stuff and all that. And it just strikes me even more that everything was finished last year, or, granted the league was finished early, but they played the Scottish Cup last year. I know it's further on, last year's one, just to give Celtic a chance of another treble, just to keep them happy, and it's like everybody will go, oh, that's bitter because the other team got beat, but it's, to me, that should have just been, but actually been null and void last year. Same with the Scottish Cup this year, it should have been you either should have just went, we're not playing it, or it should have been unless you're testing twice a week, you're not getting entered, sort of thing, because no disrespect to Bonnyrigg Rose, I sat and watched them play. They played Bo'ness on the 2nd of January. I paid on Facebook to watch their game because there was nothing else on, but it was good to watch their game. And then watch them playing against Dundee, and you're going, like the Dundee guys at the time, I don't know if they were testing, but it's like, you can't tell me the Bonnyrigg guys were testing. Somebody, you know what I mean? It's no disrespect to them or what they're doing. I'm not having a go at them, but the criteria is there for the professionals, but it's not there for the lower down the leagues you go. And I know we spoke about testing in the previous podcast about associations helping out and stuff like that, and the PFA helping out and stuff. But to me, it's just like, we'll get all the pros tested, the guys that do it full time, and everybody else, it doesn't really matter. And it's that should have been all considered right at the start. And I know like the League Two and the League One teams have said, look, we'll go to twice a week testing and stuff, but all that should have been considered. And then there's like, I think, I don't know if it was Ali that made the point, or it was somebody else I heard it, but surely that, say they went, right, everybody in the top 4 tiers, however it was going to get funded, it was going to get funded, but everybody's going to test twice a week. If you don't test twice a week, you're not playing. There was a hard line on that, right? Regardless of whether you're part-time, full-time, if you're not testing twice a week, you're out. That's it. You can sit a season out, or we'll find somebody else, or whatever would have happened, right? Would have happened. And to me, it's like, surely it would be better for, like, to me and Ali, who, I know you don't have to go to uni at the moment, Bob, but like, I still go in the office. So I could be playing, one of the guys in my team could be playing in League Two. Surely it would be more beneficial if he's getting tested twice a week. Even with Joe Bloggs like me still being deemed that I have to be a key worker and go in the office. Surely that would be better, the more people that you test, regardless of what level they are or whereabout they are or whatever, So if these guys are playing twice a week, and I know they're going to come into contact because they're playing football, there's that risk as well, but surely them being tested twice a week is going to be beneficial for the whole country, rather than, right, we'll just test the pros and then everybody else, you can just sort of, it's kind of like you can worry about. And I think a lot of, and I've read a lot of things about sort of saying they're not stopping the Championship because the SPFL worried about what Hearts would do, and not stopping the Premier League because they're worried about Rangers would do and stuff. And I'm like, well, there's maybe an element of that, but I think there's also an element of, it goes back to maybe there's an element of why they finished the Scottish Cup, because of sponsorship, and people are paid, they would lose out the money. Obviously, they lost out the money because they finished the season early anyway, with the BT and the Sky deal. They lost all that money. Would they lose out on all the money that BBC are putting in to put all these Friday night games on? Clubs, not just Hearts, but like, say, your Queen of the South, say, your Dunfermlines, and all the teams that are playing on a Friday night, everybody else, Arbroath and that were playing on a Friday night, all these clubs would lose out on money as well. I'm not saying it's right, but I think there's maybe an element of behind that they too haven't stopped because there's no League One, League Two TV coverage as well. So look, I'm not saying it's right because I do miss watching I used to when we go on to our next topic, because we've had our moans, but I still reminisce and enjoyed my time going to watch Edinburgh City playing in the old East of Scotland League. When it all started, it'll be close to 30 years now, which is I think that. I enjoyed going to watch City playing in public parks and stuff and all that stuff and doing all that. You know what I mean? It probably gives me a great perspective of having a season ticket for a Scottish Championship team who are full time and being in the Premier League, and seeing them in Champions League qualifiers and stuff, and having a perspective of going, no, I do go and watch real football as well, where I go and watch the guys who have worked 35 hours a week, and then they roll their sleeves up, and they roll their socks up, and they play 90 minutes on a Saturday. So it probably gives me, I'm missing that. I miss that probably more than watching, the pretty boy stuff, because you don't have an affiliation. And I talk to Aaron when I do some live streaming with him and how the two of us watch Newcastle, even that's getting mind them, and you just get frustrated at them and don't watch them. At least you can watch City and go, we are very fortunate, I think, as a fan base that we have such a strong connection with the club. Not that I'm angling for $250 a week. I'd be happy at £200 a week if they wanted to all give us that. But I think we're fortunate in that, and you miss that as well because it's more. And I'm not going to say, but we could probably go back to Bob's TV celebrity moment when he talks about you're not treated as a customer down in the lower leagues, but it seems more of a community thing, and more of a, like, obviously I'd met Bob before, but I've never met Ali, or we would have never met all the young team, we would have met, all the stuff that we do. It's like, it has pulled a lot of us all together. It's a good community that we have and a good group we have. It's missing that. And I, as much as I get that, we're going to watch Hearts as well, but it's different doing it with City because you get to go to all places and all corners of Scotland that I'd never thought I would go to. As I could talk about Annan all over and over and over and over. What a day it was. You know what I mean? So even there's a place past Dumfries. Is there? Nah, I don't believe you. So, you could do all these things. And it just, I'm gutted that it seems like it has been just, but objectively, not just being just want to stick it up one of the Ugly Sisters, but I do think there's an element of there's no TV deal, and I think that's why we've been taking into consideration that as much as City and the guys in League Two and League One will lose out, and there will be sponsorship involved, I fully get that, but the TV money will probably outweigh what guys are getting, you know what I mean? And it's maybe League One and League Two have probably been able to budget without not having any TV money, as to where your likes of your Dundees, your Arbroaths, all these teams, Championship, even the Premier League, you look at like Hamilton and stuff like that, they'll all been budgeting because they'll have had TV money coming in. And it's I'm not saying it's right, but I think that's maybe an element of why they two are going on than the other two aren't.
I can see that point, but I think that possibly brings us back to how the SPFL board have kind of mismanaged the leagues for long enough. I mean, other countries have like all their divisions televised at some instance. No, I mean, we've said before, maybe like an SPFL TV streaming service, people pay their money and all that kind of stuff. It just seems that like League One and League Two and below for that matter as well, obviously the Lowland and Highland leagues and so on and so forth, it just seemed like an easy fix because of things that were happening at higher levels. And the more it goes on, the more you kind of think this is actually why it was stopped. And then Doncaster uttered the words null and void about 4 or 5 days into the shutdown. And you're like, the less it comes out and the more you've seen over the last couple of years, the more sceptical you become of the SPFL board, which really is worse for them because nobody really trusted them anyway. And it gets to that point where you're like, yep, you're saying that, but do we actually believe you? And at times you don't. And it almost seems like null and void because he uttered it so early on after the shutdown that this was the end goal. Get rid of the two leagues and below. We'll just allow the other two to carry on anyway. I mean, things like the testing and all that, I can understand the television point, but there's part-time teams in the Championship and there's full-time teams in Leagues 1 and 2. You know?
Yeah.
And the fact that all, like, for all our years, for all our combined years of watching Scottish football, how often have you seen teams come together the way Leagues 1 and 2 did to have a joint statement to say, for the good of the game, even though it's going to cost some of us like a considerable amount of money, we're going to do this to get back, only to be told, no. You know, nope, sorry guys. And you're like, what, why? And then they say originally, then they came up with saying, no, it's in the government's boat, it was the government that caused that shutdown, but the government have said nothing. And then when the original shutdown happened, that definitely came for the SFA, because as we said in the last pod, 3 days before, the First Minister had actually made mention of it during the daily briefing that she wasn't looking for lower leagues to get stopped. And obviously it seemed very much for reading the statement that it was the governing bodies who decided to take the decision that it was Leagues 1 and 2 and below, or the SFA on their own. I don't think even the JRG were consulted either. The second one, there was nothing from the government. It was the third one that then came out and said the government have said not to. Yet at that time, the case rate was lower than it was in October when they restarted. Test positivity rate was lower than what it was in October when they started. And there was another stat along those lines. Everything in terms of the kind of COVID scenario was all better in terms of what it was when they started in October. Mm-hmm. So there's I've got a real degree of scepticism of why this is carrying on. And I think it kind of roots a little bit in my real distrust in what goes on higher up. Ali, what do you think?
Yeah, it's hard to decipher where the things. I think for me, I don't know whether I think it's some grand conspiracy. I think with the shutdown, as I said it before, they needed to be seen to do something because there's been instances of bad behaviour from football teams, and we've seen some in just the last few weeks. You know, and it was almost as if the Leagues 1 and 2 and then the leagues below were just sacrificed because we're an easy target, because essentially nobody cares. Nobody particularly cares what we think or what we say about it. And I don't know. I just don't think anybody actually knows. I don't think there's some grand plan behind it. I don't think there's anything. Maybe even, I know you're just saying that you're cynical and you're right to be about it, but I wonder if it feels like it's more incompetence to me than anything like mendacious, if you know what I mean. That's the way it comes across. And even, for example, when we're telling tales out of school here, when the shutdown was announced, it's not as if the clubs have been consulted about it. The clubs and the chairman found out at the same time as we did. They found out on Twitter, basically. It's not as if there was anything there. And I think that to me just smacks of incompetence and panic. And that's all it's been. And the thing is, once football's shut down, once Leagues 1 and 2 are shut down and the leagues below it, the argument to bring them back again is really hard. You've got to make, I know you're saying about test positivity rates and incidence rates, etc. Your argument to bring something back in has to be so much stronger than it was initially when it was already there, if you know what I mean. So I just don't know how they're going to be able to make that argument, if I'm honest with you. I don't know how many cases we saved by having the league shut down. Who knows? Nobody knows that. You know, nobody can say how many instances there's been people caught at training or during games. I suspect it's quite low, to be honest with you, because I think we would have heard more about it in other leagues as well. But you know, what the clubs came, and fair play, you're right, the clubs came together and said, look, we are happy to make this sacrifice. We are happy to pay for the testing facility, which puts us on an even keel with the rest of Scottish football that's continuing, including part-time teams. And for me, I didn't get an actual reason why that was rejected. It was just, you know, I think we were all quite excited when we saw the statement. Oh, you know, here we go. This might be the chance for us to get back. We might get to get the season finished. And it's just like, it's almost as if someone deleted the email, to be honest with you, with a statement on it. It just didn't seem to get picked up at all.
That's a rumour start.
Maybe ended up in Dundee's spam folder or something.
Spam folder, yeah. But me, I don't think it's. I think it's incompetence is the problem, really, and particularly cynical, unfortunately.
I think one of those things that pick up on what you said, it's just a general lack of communication. Because it seems very much like, especially for fans, it might be different for the clubs, I don't know, but because we're not hearing anything necessarily directly from the club. I don't think any of the clubs are giving out any information, which to me would suggest that they're not getting anything either. So we're kind of just stuck in the dark, and it just seems like they're all in these kind of smoky wee rooms, or what would you mean smoky rooms? So obviously not like smoke indoors anymore, but these kind of like darkened corridors, and not saying anything, lights off, not going to speak to anybody. And I think that's what really is the frustrating thing about it all, is that you just don't hear anything. I mean, today's update that we got from the SFA JRG was a nothing statement. Well, nothing to report until we've got something to report. Well, what's the point? What you should have said was, right, we have had talks with the government, even just a little bit, saying, yeah, we have had talks with the Scottish government. We're still in talks with the Scottish government. We've put forward a plan, or the clubs have come forward to put forward a plan. There was none of that. It was just, well, we'll find out when we find out. What's the point? So it's so frustrating, and it's just, it's the effect that it's going to have on fans not being able to go. Like you said, the community aspect. Really, I know we've only got like a small number of fans, but it's quite a strong community, I would suggest. That's going to be the same for a lot of fans up and down the country. It's going to have an effect on players. I mean, there was Conor Ballatoni tweeting today that he's like, well, why have we not heard anything? Get your fingers out, kind of. You've heard for other players tweeting about on social media that, it's affecting them a little bit. I mean, it's not even just, obviously there's the mental side, the physical side, but for a lot of the players as well, I've got some sympathy, because the guys lower down don't make a king's ransom. And a lot of the players in Leagues 1 and 2 and below actually have that as a second job. Like some people who are in, say, like the service industry and have to take two jobs to make ends meet. Some footballers use football as that to make ends meet. But everybody just seems to assume that because you're a footballer, you must make a lot of money. So this second job is really just kind of like pocket money. But for some of the guys, and going back to that talk I had the other week, Danny Denham said that. He says some of the guys need that money. Furlough doesn't necessarily cover it all. You might not even be able to go on furlough, I think, for some people. If your club's not going to top up with 20%, that's 20% you've got to find elsewhere. I mean, it's difficult for some of these guys to even make ends meet a lot of the time as well. And I do have some sympathy for that, for a lot of the players. And to be honest, I do have sympathy for coaching teams and board level as well, because they're just in the dark. You're going to have irate fans tweeting into and phoning up going, "Where's my football? What are you doing? You're doing nothing." When in actual fact, a lot of them are working really hard behind the scenes, but they can't communicate anything because they're not getting anything. Yeah. So it's just a whole difficult situation all around, and it's just I don't know. You're kind of getting fed up, but you don't want to get fed up and become full of antipathy, because if you do that, you start thinking, well, what's the point in going back? And I dare say there's going to be some fans that like that, going, you know what, I'm sick of it all, man. Well, why would the impact that's going to have on clubs further down the line as well? So Rooney, what's your thoughts?
Look, I'm not going to. I don't disagree with what either of you have said. I think you probably I'm probably still in work mode. That I'm trying to look at stuff objectively, rather than just being interested in, God, it's all Doncaster and the SFA's fault. But there's probably an element of both. There is probably an element of both of the TV stuff and the put somebody up. What gets me as well is you look at this, what clubs are doing in the breaches. What's happened at Rangers and what's happened at Aberdeen is not the club doing the breach. You know what I mean? That's the only thing I would say on that. Celtic had their breaches because they went for their training camp / jolly to Dubai, right? That's why they've had their breaches, which is, to me, has made more out of it, because it's not as if like the boys had a house party and they were caught having a house party, and that's why the breaches have had. Celtic wouldn't be getting hammered for it, but the players, like the Rangers players and the Aberdeen players. Granted, it goes to the clubs because it's employees, like we discussed before about what Ali and I, if that would be me and Ali sworn enough to Dubai, we'd fucking be wanting us in the jail. But that's a different story. So I think that's probably highlighted it and just made it even worse. To say that there's probably will be an element that the SFA have went, right, we need to be seen to be doing something. But what they should have been doing is maybe fining or warning Celtic very, very heavily. I don't think they could do, I'm saying fining, I don't think they would get away with fining them. I don't think they would get away with giving them a points deduction because technically they weren't breaking the law. As much as it pains me to say it, they weren't breaking the law. They were strongly advised not to go, but there's that, is it essential journey or not? That comes into it as well. But
I suppose you could say they were breaking the law of public opinion.
Well, there's that, yeah, exactly. But you know what I mean? It's not in black, like we've said before, it's not in black and white. The airports aren't shut.
Yeah.
People can come and go out the country. They've followed the protocols that were told for them to go. If they've deemed that essential and the rest of the country's went, you're having a laugh, then, that's happened. It should have been more of a, look, guys, why have you done it, blah, blah, blah. Somebody should have been having a word with them, but they've not. So they've went, oh, well, nobody's told us we can't do it, so we're doing it.
Yeah, I think if they just kind of looked at it a bit more pragmatically and went, do you know what, guys, cases are going up at the minute. Obviously we said back in November we can go, maybe it isn't such a good idea.
Let me finish and go. Look, I think there's probably an element. There's a mixture, and I don't think it's one thing. I would love to say I'm just going to be bitter, Bob, and just go blame Doncaster and SFA, ram them. They didn't care about anybody. I read something today to go on a page of going, the SFA care about two things: the Ugly Sisters and when Scotland's doing well. That's it. So we should. Let's fingers crossed and hope we get back in to see some sort of League Two football between now and the end of the season.
I think as much as I've had a rant and as much as I tend not to go down the conspiracy theory rabbit hole with this, in actual fact, I'm writing a piece just now, and one of the aspects is like, obviously you've got, everybody complained, or they only kept, the way it was voted was to keep breaking in the league. There's another 41 clubs in the SPFL who voted, and the majority decided to do what they did last year. They're not all going to be voting for breaking to stay in a league. I mean, that's just balderdash. Let's just have a think about things here, right? Maybe the idea came up or whatever from there, then that's fine. I mean, you're seeing now maybe like things are going to happen because Alloa at the bottom and Brecon are at the bottom, and that's because the two chairmen are on the SPFL board and all that. That's fair enough. I think it more comes back to incompetence. Yes, people will be looking out for their own self-interest. All clubs do that at some point, I think, to a point, and that's fair. I think everybody would understand that to a point. But when it comes down to a vote, there's a vote of 42 clubs, and there has to be a certain number of those 42 clubs who have to vote a certain way to get these scenarios. So as much as you have your Twitterati, Scottish football Twitterati coming out and saying, "Oh well, it's because of this, that, and the other," I can look at it a bit more pragmatically and say, "Oh, let's just take a wee step back here and have a think about things." You know what I mean? I mean, fortunately, we voted again for the pyramid after taking some wild abuse I may add that I never got any apology for, because I had to take it on the Twitter account. Some of us continue to vote for the pyramid. Some of us will continue to vote for the pyramid. Obviously, it did affect us because we were in a playoff position, but I think it was more, I think the way the statement was worded more was so that there had to be a promotion playoff. And I think, as we said at the beginning, we're now probably going to have 2 years in a row without like any pyramid playoffs across any of the leagues in Scotland. And frankly, I just find that absolutely unacceptable. And that's because of the incompetence and mismanagement from those that are in charge of the game, really.
Scottish football has to evolve, and if it's going to stay 4 professional leagues, it has to evolve with that pyramid system. Because I don't want to sound disrespectful to the teams that have been there for so long, but it comes back to going through the motions. How many years did East Stirling and that finish? Shire finished bottom of the league. I'm sorry, the Shire fans, but how many years? You go, well, you could back, you almost took who they were playing every week on your bet because you knew you were going to get beat, and then it was like, no, wait a minute, you can get relegated. So it's sporting competition, and I don't want to say it's not integrity, but it's competition, isn't it? And it's competition you need. There's so many teams out with that we know just in our local extended Edinburgh area and in at Fife that will add so much value, and there'll be so many in the West as well. There, and we just need to look at Kelty. We just need to look at Bonnyrigg Rose, and that's just the name too. That they would add so much to the Scottish Professional League. I've done well to remember that. But they would add so much, and it's football's evolving, and it seems to be that we're so backward, and it's like that's the status quo, and that's how it goes. And it's you've seen how you just need to look at like down south, like Lincoln. What are Lincoln in League One now? And I'm going, Lincoln were like non-league for a few years ago. You just look at things like that. It can happen. Unfortunately for us, but look at Cove. So it can happen. And it's there. It's teams. There's so many teams that are probably well supported out with the professional league in Scotland that would add value if they decide to come into the pyramid. And I know a lot of them have now, but a lot of them are trying to get into the pyramid to get in because there's now an option there to do it. I was just reading up on stuff before we moved on to our topic, because I was racking my brains, and I'm reading and I'm going, how many City applied to get in and never got in because they let Gretna in. Then Gretna went out the box. They tried to apply to get in, and did they get in because they let Annan in? And you're like, geez, you forget. I forgot about the Gretna one. I remembered about Annan, but I forgot about Gretna. You look at Annan getting in. Annan's a cracking setup. They've got a decent fan base. They've got, a bar. If the board are listening, they've got a bar, a social club right beside the ground, right, that you can just sort of. It's actually even closer than Berwick's. You didn't even, it literally is like. It's probably about 4 feet between you leaving the bar and going to the ground. Exactly. I know. For the viewers that are listening, you get Bob's reaction is unbelievable on the video. So.
It's just a red rag to a bull, that one, isn't it?
It is. Well, it was too good. It made it a wee bit easier because we got pumped that day as well. At least we could get for a fight quick enough after it. We'll get to that. That's a different story for a different day. So, you look at that. You've got all these things that could add so much value. And don't get me wrong. There's teams that have been in there and they've got history there and everything, but the world changes and life changes, and you have to evolve and you have to move on. If you don't, and I have to learn this in my work, if you can't accept change, you can't learn to adapt and move on with change, you're going to get left behind. And Scottish football's been like that for a long time.
Yep. Final point, Sally, before we go into point 2.
Yeah, I think in terms of, I'd like to see there should be an opportunity to do something different with Scottish football. The point about the teams coming into the junior leagues, into the SPFL setup, that's an amazing opportunity because there's some great names there. There's some. It's what we want as fans is good away days. Teams coming to visit us, teams we've not played before. There's opportunities to actually do something a bit different and say, look, the last 2 seasons are almost a write-off, or basically are a write-off really in terms of look, let's take this as a chance to restructure. Let's get through West playing against some of these junior teams. Let's get some stuff and just for a bit of excitement again. Let's bring more people into the game. I don't think it'll happen, but for all the reasons we've just talked about, but it seems like a perfect opportunity to try and create something good out of this absolute mess that we find ourselves in.
So I think the one final thing I'd say is that when teams lower down the leagues in Scotland tend to get a hard time for those higher up. That they're just wee diddy clubs, they've got no ambition and all this kind of stuff. Yet you see some of the ones that have come in, like we said, Kelty, Bonnyrigg, we also have got East Kilbride, BSC, these type of teams. You know what I mean? They've all got ambitions to go higher up. Queen's Park have just turned full time. Our own chairman Jim said that we've got plans to go full time. I mean, that's teams showing ambition. I mean, that's a very kind of like definition of showing ambition. Yeah. You want to go higher up. You want to make yourself the best team possible, whether that be part-time or full-time. So I just sometimes, hopefully this can have some kind of attitude change, because I think the whole attitude for how people see the lower leagues starts for the very, very top. And this kind of shutdown just kind of summed it up for me. Is that they can just be like, doesn't really matter what happens to League 1 and 2 and below, you know, because it doesn't matter that the top two are fine. And then that kind of feeds into fans, because obviously, like, we'll be kind of like, we know exactly what goes on. The majority of fans are in the top two leagues. We know that. We're no daft. But in the same respect, is that you try and market your game lower down to get more fans, and as alternatives, if you're getting a bit sick of higher up, that's how I came to Edinburgh City. You know, just this is a perfect opportunity to do that. And whether they do it or not, like you said, Ali, that's the question. You know. But anyway, yes, that's probably us done for that.
Part two.
Part two coming. We'll see in a few weeks, guys, when there's still no football back and we're still back moaning again. No. In all seriousness, it's just difficult. I think we're all just fed up, really, isn't it? That's probably the best way to say it. Right. Anyway, on to something slightly more entertaining. Hopefully something that's going to cause a little bit more debate. Hopefully we can have people engaging with us on Twitter, YouTube, wherever this goes. You can give us pelters. I don't really care, because we're right and you're no. Unless it's Jarrett decides to complain, then we might have some. And I like my own. But anyway, what we're going to do, guys, we kind of started trialing this on Twitter last year, was to get people to put in their best City 11s, you know, your favourite players or whoever. We got a little bit of response. So we're going to try and do that today, just for something that's a bit different for talking about the doom and gloom of football, or games or player analysis or anything like that. So we're going to try and get together between the three of us a possible best 11 that we've seen. There's going to be a wee bit of debate for, I'm assuming, some of the positions.
Yeah.
There's probably about 3 players, I'm guessing, will have little debate at all. You can probably guess who they are instantly, but we'll get there anyway. So, what position do we want to start with? Do you want to start with formations or actual positions?
I think, Robert, before we start, you take notes just to make sure for when we get to our collective 11 and formation, and then what I'll do is I'll do some fancy graphics as well.
You'll do some fancy graphics. Well, what we forgot to tell you listeners is we're trying out a couple of new things today. We're going to record this, then we're going to put the audio onto Anchor rather than recording straight to Anchor. Hopefully that makes a wee bit difference to the listening experience. And we're also recording it to hopefully put it on YouTube. Neil, our technical guru here, has got himself a wee toy for his PC, and he's going to start faffing about with some graphics. So fingers crossed it all comes out well. We'll see how it goes after today's trial. It may be a one and done, but hopefully not. But anyway, it sounds all pretty good so far to me. That's going to be amazing. Right. Sorry. So what we're starting with? Formation?
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm the only one who wants 4 at the back. I think we're looking at 2 back threes for the other 2. Is that right?
I think, and I'm going to be. I think I've seen City most successful, and I need to put a disclaimer in, because I probably watched them more than the 2 of yous, and I go back to being there right at the start. My memory not being good enough to remember all these good players. I can just remember watching Andy Irvin's dad playing, and probably Josh Doig's dad playing. I can just remember that. And then I look at guys at that team, and I'm racking my brain for players, and I'm going to do so many good players this service. Even like when we talk about Gary Jardine and that playing and all the guys, and I was like, where's the Man United programme? So I can see the team that played Man United all those years ago. So I apologise. And don't take it personal if we've missed all these great players. You can come on one day and put us right if you do watch it. But to me, it has to be 3 at the back with 2 wing backs.
I'm a 3 at the back man, because I think the most successful City teams for me is always had 3 at the back, or 3 centre halves, and then playing the 2 wing backs.
This might be very short and sweet then if Ali doesn't get in entry with me.
No, it's fine. One of my left back can shuttle across to play a left-sided centre back.
Oh, that's exciting.
That's
it. Right, so we're playing 3 at the back.
Yeah.
Right, what we'll do then? So what does that leave us with? A 5-2 or a 1-4-2 or a what we doing? 3-4-3 for it would be really exotic.
I think if we're going to agree, we'll go through our goalie, our three centre halves, and our two wing backs.
And then we'll do that, and then we can sort of out. So, right, we'll start with goalkeeper. I would also put any apologies, any of the current team who are listening. If you don't make it, it's not a slight on you guys. Obviously, some of us have been around a long time, but all three of us have been around a long time now. We've seen some good players over the years. There probably is some misty-eyed nostalgia about the team that got us promoted. And maybe a wee bit before that as well. So if you don't make it, apologies. There's probably quite a number of yous who will be very close to getting in if you haven't made it. So, goalkeeper, Ali.
I think for me, it's the area we struggled with, and I suppose with all of, you know what, I think he's the best goalkeeper I've seen regularly play for City, and my time watching him is a bit shorter than you guys. I think Antel's the best goalkeeper we've had in my time watching. So it would be the current number one would be in goal for my team.
Rooney?
Yeah, he's done really, really well. I think we spoke about this when he's listening to the old podcast when I'm painting my new flat. So he's done really well now. We had a settle back four in front of him, but old Babs, Mr. McIntosh is a cracking goalie as well. But for me, I'm going to go for Andrew Stobie because he was probably. It'd be interesting if we had signed David McGinn. What would have happened there? Because we'll talk about that. We could do that one time. The nearly men. But I would go for Andrew Stobie. Just brilliant with the ball at his feet. For me.
I would probably side with Stobie as well. We've had some pretty good goalkeepers. I think Antel's. I think he'll admit that himself. He said I had a shaky start to begin with, but over the last 2 or 3 years, he's come in a really, really good game. He's saved us from a few hide-ins. Much like Stobie, I think he had a wee bit of injury problems as well. Obviously, you had Babs a wee bit further back. We had Duncan Monteith, whose warm-ups kicking about. We used to nickname him Hagita because of all these big high kicks and all this kind of stuff. And I tell you what, he was brilliant at saving penalties. From my recollection. But I would side with Stobie as well. Obviously, part of the promotion team.
Even Amos as well was part of that. You know, even part of that team, and he not played Stirling that day because we were all like,
that's right.
What? Gregor played the goals that day, you know. And
he looked about 5'2" in the goals.
I know he did. He looked tiny, although he probably isn't. But he did look tiny in those goals. But you know, so I think we've been fortunate and very fortunate to have some really good goals.
Right, so we're okay with that then. Right, centre halves. I think the very obvious one. Shall I just say Joe Mabou right now?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Middle of the back three, I think.
Yeah.
Perhaps unsurprising for many people who's ever listened, spoke to me, Rooney, Ali, or anybody else who's been there for a while. Joe was unquestionably probably the best centre half I've seen at City. I'll probably all agree with that. I mean, we had a very, very good. A very, very good team in the Lowland League, and he turned out for a very, very good team and a championship-winning team, I think. And I think his signing really, really changed the dynamic and changed the route of where this club was going. Obviously, we'll come on to somebody else who's obviously had a massive influence on the team, but I think in terms of us getting that final push to be promoted, it was Joe. I mean, like me and Rooney were at the celebrations at the social club after the famous Jaeger bomb incident. But I think you can see how much regard he was held in by the players.
Yeah,
he was the last in. All the players came in. It was like an applause and a shake hands for everybody else, and he came in, and all the players just erupted. You know, all the players started singing the Joe Mabou song. You know, it was like the king had just walked in. You know, it was a sight to behold. Only these things you had to really experience. But it was unquestionable. Just the esteem Joe's held in, and I think when he came back to do the halftime draw last year as well, you could see that as well.
Yeah. I couldn't really believe that day. You know, there was a photo of us obviously because the file was sponsored them. Not that that's got any impaired their judgment at any point whatsoever. I couldn't believe how short he was.
Aye, because we have a picture all together. I mean, there's two guys here 6'5". You're what, 6'2", 6'3", really?
Yeah.
I'm 5'10", and Joe is the second smallest.
Honestly, we were all like, and then he didn't get me wrong. He was cracking to speak to him, whatever. He stood and spoke to us at length before we started playing over Jägermeister, and he was a good lad, but you were just like, so Joe, you're really quick. And then I don't think any of us bridged the question to go, can't you believe how short you are as well? Because he seems like an absolute mountain of a man on the football pitch, but he maybe, he come across like that anyway.
I think for me, when you look at Joe, everyone talks about his physical, and he was incredibly quick. It was remarkable. Yeah. But I think the reason he looked so tall was he read deliveries into the box really well. His positioning was absolutely superb. So he never got caught for being either that the ball was magnetically attracted to his head or something, but it was just remarkable. But I think you've got to give the guy credit for his football intelligence. I really think you do, and I think that's what's put him aside from other players, because he was, I think he's one of the three that Bob mentioned that was going to be in everybody's team. There's absolutely no doubt about it. One of the easiest ones to put in.
Definitely.
Yep. Should we discuss the Jägerbomb incident or leave that to the side and leave the listeners hanging?
We can leave that.
It's in print anyway because I wrote about it, so it's not a big thing. Joe said it was a good article, so I can't. He's obviously not that bothered about it. Obviously, Mrs. Baboon didn't read it. Right, the next centre half, Ali. Who we going with?
Right, so I'm going to pull in a player from the current team who was at left back on my on when I was having my back four. But one of the great benefits of this player is that he can tuck inside, play the left hand side of a back three. He's certainly our most handsome player that I've seen playing for Edinburgh City, and it's Mack. He's just an absolutely tremendous football player. Just irrespective of what era you're talking about at City, I think you just got to say about the guy's quality. It's just remarkable. It makes it a better team. It makes it a better team every time he plays. We miss him hugely. He's a creative influence. He's absolutely rock solid. Again, just a tremendous football player who probably deserves a higher stage than us. So hopefully we can give him it, as we progress through the divisions. Fingers crossed. But Mack for me, left-sided centre half.
Really?
Well, the only current member of the back three that I have. I have Ballatoni. I think as much as Ballatoni's he's getting a bit slower as he gets a wee bit older. But I think when Ballatoni came in, Ballatoni was a real signing of intent to go, wait a minute, this guy's played in the Premier League. This guy, I know Rab's, played down at York and stuff like that, and was at Rangers as a youngster and whatever. But when Ballatoni came in, it was like, whoa, wait a minute. This guy's top notch. This guy could still be playing when he first signed for us, could have still been easily playing in the Championship. Just to use his quality. Granted, obviously, he's getting a bit older now and he's reading the game differently and how he's playing and whatever. But to me, I think he's been a class act for us. I think he would be a shoo-in, to be honest.
I've got Ballatoni in my 11, but on the other side, on the right-hand side. As you brought up, Sexy Rab Mack, and I think everybody knows my great fondness for him. I was actually tempted to change my 3 to a 4 to accommodate him.
Look at Ali's face.
Right, because originally on my left-hand side, I had Chris McKee.
Well,
I was a huge fan of Chris McKee.
I did like McKee.
I thought obviously a wee bit unlucky with injuries, but I thought the way him, Joe, and who's the other one? Fraser Patterson or Shegsy as well.
Yeah.
Just really played well together. But I'm happy to forgo Chris McKee for Sexy. So apologies, Chris. But I make no secret of the fact I think Robbie McIntyre is an absolute Rolls Royce of a football player. He's as I described him on another pod, I called him the Dennis Irwin in Edinburgh City, mainly for the simple fact is that he's so consistent, he's so good at his job, he never lets you down, he's never let us down. So yeah, I'm happy to put Sexy as the left side.
The thing is, well, I've maybe jumped the gun there because the left side of my centre half, I did have Chris McKee as well. That was my other centre half.
It's a debate. I'm not making an executive decision. That's the problem.
Pencil it in with what you've got, because we might not agree on a midfield, and you might be able to slot somebody else into that midfield.
Whoever's playing this team is going to have a field day down the channels if it's Balotelli and Chris McKee. I mean, come on. You've got to have a bit of athleticism in the team.
This is true, but this is where some of the midfield comes in. That's why I wanted a half-back and you guys didn't. That's why you guys wanted a half-back and I didn't. Like, no, sorry, I wanted a half-back, you guys didn't.
I know,
But aye, so, and the thing is, Rab has played centre-half for us and he's played pretty well there. So I'm happy with that. Right-hand side, who was your other centre-half then, Ali, of your original 4 at the back?
So I am going to go with a player that, again, obviously, the season that we stayed at, the first season we came into League Two, and when it looked for so long, we're just going to go straight back down, and we were a bit of a laughing stock for a while. There was one moment where everything looked like, what everything's conspiring against us. We are going to go here. We were away at Arbroath, and the clock was ticking down, and a player who came to us, a 17-year-old boy on loan, 17, 18-year-old boy, just tackled the ball into the net, and I think you guys were at the game. I was at home watching it. That's the most I ever celebrated a goal when I wasn't actually at a game live. It just was that moment that just brought everything. And it was, do you know what? I was talking, and it's Ryan Porteous I'm talking about here, a guy who will go on to be capped for Scotland. I don't have any doubt about it. Who will go on to Hibs at, I think, a reasonable sum of money. So it's great to see someone that comes from. So that's great to see him progressing through. But I was chatting away. If you remember when he got one of his many red cards against, I can't remember who it was against Rangers, but it was one of those ones where he slowed down and just went right through the boy. It was a reckless, ridiculous, stupid challenge. And I was chatting away to one of my pals who used to come along a few City games. I was like, he was actually a calmer, more composed player at 17 because he had Mboo next to him. And then we talked about Joe earlier, that football intention. Joe used to talk him through games. And actually, for Porteous would smash it at folk and have everyone laughing at the tackle. But he was brought a great energy to the side. You could see his raw talent, and he had a huge role in keeping us in the division that year. And if we dropped out that year, I don't think we'd have been back in it anytime soon. It was we had our real chance to get up and make it. There was 2 chances really, but we took it to that second goal. If we'd gone down again, it would have been there. So if it wasn't for Ryan Porteous, I don't think we would be here. I think it gives a good balance so that he completes my back three. Porteous on the right hand side.
Really? Well, you said Balotelli, yeah?
I said Balotelli. As much as Porteous has had a big back to play, it's like, I mean, the name Russell Latapy went past me. Latapy only played 1 Scottish Cup game. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm not saying he's not. He's had a big part to play, but I think these longevity and what the other guys have done.
I think that was for me was with Porteous, knowing he was on loan and things like that, and that all goes against him. But it was the impact he had, and actually the moments that were enough to just push him into my side.
It's a tough one because. Again, anybody that knows me knows I'm a huge fan of Porto. Not just for that goal to give the first edition of scenes at an away match. I'm getting over seats on top of a dugout. The boys next to us cracked his head into a wall. Dougie Gair's mum is shouting unspeakable obscenities in celebration. I believe Ja was celebrating in the boardroom before he got shouldn't be doing that kind of look. Everybody piling on in the corner, the referees piling on in the corner. Yes, he also got the Players Player of the Year that year. So as a 17-year-old, that's a huge reckoning.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Porto. I think you're right in what you say is that you had Joe talking them through games, and that made a massive difference. Obviously, myself and Rooney have spoke to a couple of our Hibs friends in a group chat about that, saying that part of the problem is it looks like he's not really getting that kind of education for, say, Paul Hanlon or a Darren McGregor or somebody like that. Like, I don't watch a huge amount of Hibs, so I might be wrong, but certainly that's the feeling I'm getting from Hibs fans. Part of that problem is he's not So some of it is just because he's an absolute dead case sometimes, But
Yeah.
maybe that's why he was suited to us at League Two, because he can just go and kick folk and get away with it. No, don't know. Right, can we come back to that one?
Right,
Can we come back to that one?
Right, let's get into midfield then. Come
Right,
on.
left wing back. I suppose it can only really be one guy, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is only one guy, but I think it would have been better in my formation, but I left wing back is
Yeah.
No, you're better, Ali. No, you're better.
Just because he would have
You've got to remember for this player is that we saw when you could run.
well, that's true, I suppose. But
And he played
even later on. He played. Yeah.
Aye, and he played in that position for a long time. He's
certainly he's captain. He's on penalties. He's on set pieces. It's Dougie Gare, obviously, for left wing back for me. And I presume
the shortest discussion of the night. Yeah. Yes.
Aye. So Sir Douglas, the all-time record holder for probably every single statistic apart from goals in a season.
Yeah.
And that probably could bookings and red cards. You was shy of talking back to referees, Sir Douglas is really the easiest pick of the night. We'd be totally remiss not to have our all-time record holder in there, I think.
Yeah.
Cracking servant, fitting that he scored the penalty that got us promoted. He says he was the calmest man in the stadium. Who are we to disagree?
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful picture just after he hit it.
Yeah.
And it looks like he's almost laughing at the keeper. But I'm sure he said to us on Twitter it was something to do with the referee. No, it wasn't the goalkeeper. There was guys behind him giving him abuse or something. So it was like laughing at them as if they say, "Look, I've scored." Because let's face it, I can't even remember Dougie ever missing a penalty, especially because City, when it came to penalty shootouts over the years, have been absolutely rank rotten.
Yeah.
You know, I can only really remember us winning one or two. One I think was against Spartans in the 1 Cup final, and one was against Alloa in the Iron Brew Cup. Because otherwise, we've been absolutely shocking.
We got promoted, and I went down to Peffermill with my dad to watch us playing against Whitehall Welfare in that East of Scotland that thing that we won at. You know, that we won at the Orion last year. That was the first time they'd ever won it. I went down with my dad to watch it, and we were sitting watching. We got being penalties that day. I was standing watching it with my dad and Jazz there, and he's like, penalties. No, this year, eh? And you're like, hey, what? You know what I mean? Penalties again, you're like, Jesus.
I remember going up to Brora for the playoff and that penalty shootout, and that was just horrific. You know what I mean? Going all the way up there, getting there like on a bus that was like about to break down any 2 seconds, I think. Thinking you're at Inverness, thinking Brora's just round the corner when you've probably got another 2 hours to go. Getting there for about half an hour and trying to sink as many pinks as you could to try and calm the nerves. Then you get to a penalty shootout and folk missing. Joe's one that rattled the bar that's still rattling. I think it hit off the bar and went to Mars. Sorry, Joe.
Let's move on to positive moments.
To be fair, we've spoken about it. We got promoted with Dougie's penalty, so that's positive, is it though? Right wing back. I'll let you guys go first because I've probably got somebody that is maybe slightly out of the box.
Mine's completely right out of the box because as much as Thompson's done really, really well, this man deserves his place in football history for, I don't know if we'll get shithousery, just how he acted, a converted winger, and purely because, for me, he gave Keith Anderson, my good pal, Mr. Spartans, it absolutely tight the day we got promoted in the social club because he didn't have his Spartans tie on and he was Mr. Edinburgh City that day. It has to be Jordan Caddle. It has to be, even if it means that we play with 10 men every week and Caddle just winds everybody up. Caddle's your man for me.
Ali?
So I, obviously, as I've mentioned, had a different formation, a better balanced formation than yourselves. So I was torn between moving. So Tomo was my right back if it had been a back four. I think at right wing back, when he's been at us, I don't think he's been mobile enough to play right wing back. So I have to go on what I've seen there. Obviously, we've got Dougie taking the set piece and things. So take away. So you know what, I'm going to agree. I think Jordan Caddle actually came. It got a lot of. I think he probably hung around the team as he came into League Two longer than people expected.
Yeah.
And that's real credit to the lad for the work he did. Probably underrated as a player. Total wind up person. But you need that to get through in the you don't want a team team of nice guys. So yeah, look, I'm happy to go with Caddo at right wing back, to be honest with you.
I'd be happy with that, because if you're looking for energy, Caddo gave you that, because he would run all day.
Yeah.
He would run up and down that wing all day. There's probably other right backs I can think of. My pick actually was going to be John Dunn. He played absolutely everywhere for City. I thought he looked most comfortable at right back or right wing back. Gave you enough energy, but even when he wasn't maybe as fast as he used to be, I think Dunny's football brain would help a lot in those situations. But I'm happy to go with Caddo, especially if we're lacking a bit of oomph, and obviously because I'm a big man for shithousery, which you'll find out when we get to one of our forwards. Caddo is full of it. So yes, I'm happy with Caddo. Right, we'll go with Jordan Caddo at right wing back then. Happy with that?
Yeah.
Right, now midfield. I'm suspecting the next person who I would pick in the middle of the midfield probably wouldn't have too many complaints. Would be Mark Laird.
Nope.
I think he's arguably, in terms of general class and overall ability, Lairdy's possibly been the best player I've had. Certainly since I've been watching. I think if Ja listens to this, we know Ja's feelings on Lairdy. I'm pretty sure he would make him a saint if he had the ability to do so. So yeah, Mark Laird. Any further we need to say on Lairdy?
No.
Just a class act, an absolute class act.
I think when the gaffer came out last season and had a big moan about saying you can't tell us we're a team that can't play without Mark Laird, I think that tells you how important he's been over the last few years. He obviously came in at a time when we were struggling in the league. Form immediately changed as soon as he came in. He got player of the month, I think, the month after. Obviously has his wee niggles and that, obviously as he's getting older, but he's arguably the best midfielder in the league. His footballing brain is second to none. I think you can tell as well how much the players like him through the kind of on the bench stuff last year, because every one of them said something nice about him. You know, and it was really positive. And who would you want to listen to about football? Lairdy. Who do you think is going to go into coaching? Lairdy. You know, I think that just shows how much regard he's got. Right. Next to Matt Laird.
Well, I went for three in middle because, and we discussed this off air about wingers, and really having a consistent winger was a bit. I was racking my brain, and I was like, do I go for three up front? I try and put, like, I really like Alan Smith. I thought Alan Smith would be really good, but put on an all-time 11's hard. So I've kind of shoehorned it into a three in midfield, and I went for John Dunn and Ian McFarlane.
Okay. Ali?
I'm happy to say that actually I agree entirely. So my midfield three is Laird, McFarlane and Dunn. The idea being that each of them can go in either direction, all clever enough to play to cover for each other, play different roles, and protect that. Actually, to be fair, I'm glad we've got those three all fit guys to protect that back three with that was suggested at points there. So yeah, I think Ian McFarlane was a really underrated player, such a clever football player, really good technically. Same goes for John Dunn. Obviously, I think Dunn was the last one of the promotion team to leave, and I think we were all sad to see him go, and I don't think it was just nostalgia. I think we all thought there was still really something he could do. Brave on the ball, clever on the ball, made good runs. Obviously unlucky with injuries. He had a long spell out. But yeah, that's my midfield. My midfield three. You know, Blackie was unlucky not to be in that. To be honest with you, but you know, I think just in terms of balance, so that's my three. So happy to agree bang on with Rooney.
I'll happy. There's one. I'll come back to it in a second. Yeah, you're right with Dunny in terms of how he left. I think we're all a bit. Oh, that's a bit upsetting, really. And not just because he was the last one, because I think, as you say, he's an intelligent footballer. Obviously, the fact that he managed to last so long as well showed that the club. Obviously, James handing out contracts to carry on giving one to John would say, yeah. The good thing with Dunning being in the midfield is that he can drop back into left-hand side or right-hand side, such was his versatility. Ian McFarland I have absolutely no disagreement with. He would be one of my first picks every day of the week in a City 11. I loved that boy. I still love the boy. I had an engine like I've never seen. He would get up and down that park. He was intelligent. He sometimes frustrated some of the old guard with the way he played football. But I think that was more intelligence because he had a tendency to turn back a lot. But that wasn't just to kind of turn back. It was so he was turned back for the sake of it. It was really because he wanted to retain the ball. And rather than just punting up the park to aimlessly, and then immediately it goes to them and they've got an attack, he was holding the ball so you could start all over again. I thought him and Lairdy played really well when it got to the point together. Ian obviously suffered a wee bit, I think, with injury as well, but I've got absolutely no problem with Ian McFarland. I'll probably be happy with Dunny as well. What I really wanted was a half-back in there to kind of protect the two. There was a player that used to play called Scott Hunter. If Rooney can remember him that far back, played in the East of Scotland team. I spoke to Jab about him as well. He said, "Didn't realise I went that far back." Yes, I do. He was just a very good technically minded player. He played the centre half or half back, for what I can remember. I think he was the first player I ever took with I when me, Craig and Elliot first started going. Jab, when we were speaking about him, he was a fan as well. Part of the other reason that would have been nice to have him is because a certain team that we share a ground with, their fans absolutely detested him. They used to give him pelters constantly. That was one of my abiding memories of first starting going. There was like three old guys that used to come all the time. And they were Spartans fans, but they sometimes came to our games if it was like cup games and all that kind of stuff. It was like Waldorf and Statler and a pal, right? And every time Hunter got the ball, it was like Doug's abuse, right? But it was like, when you get players that you just abuse, and it's not because you didn't like them, it's because they're good. It was that type of abuse, So I would have shaded him in, but I'm happy with that three. I think there'll be other people around the club that will be happy with that three as well. Obviously, there is Blackie. I'm a huge fan. We're all huge fans of Andy Black. I think everybody at the club is. Obviously, got our first Player of the Year award as well. I think just really, if it had been longevity and he'd maybe played as many seasons as Ian or John Dunn, then he might have had a stronger argument. I think in terms of appearances, I think Ian McFarland might be second for outfield players. I think I might have to confirm that with Alec Milne, but he's another one that came through our system, came through well. Yeah, he was just like all three of them are cracking players. Absolutely no problem at all with that. So what does that leave us with? Two centre forwards.
Yeah.
The big decisions.
We've got a really good current crop that have been. You go to Handling and guys like that have done really well in their career, and then they come to us and whatever. But I think for me, there's only two guys. You can't not pick Blair Henderson for how many goals he's battered in. You can't, for the same token, you can't not pick Ross Allam for the amount of goals that he's put. Pure and simple. We might not get much running out the two of them, but they'll certainly not miss many. So if the three in midfield can put it on a plate for them, I think we would have more chances of winning than we would losing. I don't want to disrespect. I'm sorry, Blair. I don't want to slight you too much because you worked a lot. You do work a lot harder than Ross have worked, to be fair.
And Blair actually manages to stay on side.
Yeah, well, that's true as well. That got a wee bit near the end.
Ross Inzaghi Allam. I think we called him for a number of years.
To be fair to Ross, though, when Ross was more of a, Ross worked the channels well, and especially when he knew he was one-on-one with a centre half. That's when his eyes lit up. He came alive. So we're tongue in cheek having a pop at him, but give him his due. To me, you can't not have those two.
Yep. Ali. He's going to pick Alan Smith.
I am, and the reason I am is because I just thought what I would be like watching a Blair Henderson and Ross Allam strike partnership, and how long it would take before I got a text from the chairman asking me not to come back until I'd calmed down, because I think it would just be too frustrating. Blair has to be there for the goals. The goals were ridiculous. It was national coverage for his goal scoring exploits and things, and the balance of you could bring Ross off the bench. Ross can sit on the bench and come on, but not to play with Blair. No, it just wouldn't be for me. It would give me sleepless night. In fact, I think I'll sleep tonight thinking about it. my blood's boiling already. But no, everyone knows how big a fan I am of Smithy. It's a difficult one to put in because he's been injured so much. But I think just on ability, what he brings to the team, it's going to be Blair. And I think they're pals as well. I think they drive up together from wherever it is they stay in the borders. So that'll be a nice wee strike partnership for me.
Right. Perhaps controversially, I didn't have Blair Henderson in my two. Again, for reasons of longevity.
Bob Fallon, media guru for the club. You know, yes, Blair.
It's no slight on Blair. I think he's a fantastic striker. I think that season he had was incredible. He's obviously had these problems with injuries over that, but even when he's playing, he's still scoring. I totally agree with Ross Allen for me. If you're wanting a wee bit extra in terms of shithousery department, Ross puts. I think Sergio Ramos has got one speed dial. To be honest, he was just incredible at being a top shithouser. That day at Cove, where in the playoff semi-final when we beat them 3-0. Was like nothing I'd ever seen. I mean, the Cove manager was running up the touchline after him and everything. I mean, you can't get anything better than that. But, Ross Ballantyne's doing helicopters and that on the airplanes and that in the pitch, and there's Ross Allen running by the coach and all that. Joe Sheeran's running after him.
To be fair to the Cove manager, he got a lot closer to Ross than he centre half did that day. So.
That's fair enough. And I mean, I think. Was it the third goal up at Cove? I'm starting to reminisce slightly. I was in the pie stand because it was like a pie queue.
Yeah, it was the third goal, yeah.
It was like a trailer type pie stand.
We weren't in Cove, we were in Inverurie.
We were in Inverurie, aye, yeah. It was in Inverurie, but obviously it was a Cove, but it was like a trailer thing. And I can't remember if it was Ross's, it was either Ross's second or Gordon Donaldson's goal. And they scored it. I'm jumping up and down, I'm giving it a proper get it right up you and all this kind of stuff. I was the only City fan, and amongst about 100 Cove fans. And they're all staring at me. So I'm proper giving it one of these up these kind of routine. And then just calmly went back to my place in the queue. Like nothing had happened. And they're all just looking at me. A guy threw his pie at me. Like the boy was just like, just have your pie. But yes, obviously we were spurred on there by Ross's beautiful antics, is all I could say.
I want to say before, obviously you've been giving a big licks to the Cove guys. Thanks very much to the Cove board member who I paid him money before the game for 2 programmes and he did send me them. So I have still got one. And I gave one away, but I have still got one. So thanks very much.
It was a very good day. They were very hospitable. I can't complain with that at all.
No.
They were actually really nice for the most part, especially because I didn't get my head in my hands to play with.
But it's another ground hint to the board that has a bar attached to the game.
Yes, another one. There's quite a lot around the. If we ever do get our own ground, then that's got to be something we need to think about. Anyway, my final forward selection is going back a little bit, and I had Robbie Ross.
You're going back, aye. I remember that. Yeah, I remember Robbie.
Now, for those that maybe didn't see Robbie was for me was East of Scotland versus Blair Henderson.
Yeah.
He scored a ridiculous amount of goals. Ridiculous. And there was never any doubt, I think, when he got in front of a goalkeeper where it was going, and it was in the back of the net. He eventually got us a fee by going to Arbroath. I think it was Arbroath. After me and a couple of pals had given the Arbroath manager an unwitting scouting report. We were sitting there, it was like a cup replay or something, and it was this guy in Arbroath jacket, and we just never thought anything of it. Just Arbroath for further close kin, that type of idea. So what's your opinions on the number 9 there, lads? You come a lot? Aye, we do, aye. What's your opinion, Robbie Ross? Oh, yeah, he's good there again, King. Plays off the shoulder. You know, if one-on-one, he's pretty good and all that kind of stuff. Oh, that's good to hear, aye. He looks all right, aye. 3 days later, he signed for them. And I was like, oh, no! We've just managed to get him sold. But yeah, I was a huge fan of Robbie. I mean, if he could see properly, he'd probably score even more goals. That's even frightening. Oh God, it's a tough one. Do I have to make this decision? Can someone else do it?
Well, if me and Ali do it, well, Ali won't have seen Robbie, so we're going for Blair.
Before my time.
You've got. I get what you're saying, right? But they've got a guy who got what the Iron Brews equivalent of the Golden Boot, the Tartan Boot.
And at a higher level, I guess, as well.
You know, I don't disrespect what Robbie Ross or anybody else has done previously in the club, but there won't be many guys, touch wood we do have them, but I don't see many guys breaking that record.
No, I don't think anybody will.
So, not at the level we're at the moment.
Certainly not.
Fantastic.
Right. Okay, you've convinced me to Blair Henderson then. You've convinced me. And I think you're probably right on balance. But again, that's one of those nostalgic, wistful looking back. Yeah. Oh, look how it used to be. Oh, was it so great? It was amazing in the East of Scotland League. No in park benches, it was the boys. I do miss it. Like, I don't think anybody can say we don't miss some of that kind of aspects.
We do.
But obviously, you have to progress, and the club's progressed beyond, I think, what anybody ever imagined. Yes, we'll go with Blair. I'm sorry to disappoint you, Mr. Moncrief. I'm going to have to go with Ross.
That's fine.
I just think.
Did Ross win the penalty away to East Stirling?
Yes.
It was a dive. It
was not a dive. Absolutely.
I always thought
it was a brutal assault.
I think diving to win the penalty to get us into the.
I think there was contact, but I think as soon as Ross
went past, by the way,
Ross went past the guy. If Ross was clear, he was shooting. If he felt any contact, he was going down. So
I mean, the thing was there wasn't too many complaints for East Stirling players on the day, and I think generally sometimes you can tell by players' reactions, and nobody really complained.
Because it was the boy that got sent off in the first leg, and they'd appealed it for him to be able to play. That's right. And I mean, the referee had no hesitation. Don Robertson had no hesitation, just pulling that red card out, and giving the spot penalty. I mean, I don't know. Have you watched it back yet, Rennie? Because you were facing me. I was watching it because you were too much a shite bag.
Yeah, no. There's an iconic photo which I might put into the video at some point of the boys cheering that I'm with, and I'm sitting about 5 steps down with my head in my hands. So I've not watched a penalty for a long time. So yeah, so I've seen it since. Yeah, we did penalty. Well done, Biggie.
So for many reasons like that, I'll pick Ross. He was a good striker. He was a good player. Yes, he did have his faults. Yes, he could be a bit lackadaisical, I think, at times. But if you're asking for a goal, then Ross was always good to get one. If he could just somehow keep on side, that would have been brilliant. I think I made when he first moved to Spartans, there was a Spartans tweet came up. It's like 3 minutes into the game, and it says Ross Allen caught offside, and I tweeted it off as supporters come back in and went, "Get used to that, boys." Sorry, Ross. We're tongue in cheek. We love you. That's why you're in the team. Right. So I've got one decision to make: whether to make it Ballatoni or Ryan Porteous.
I would be disappointed if it was Porteous.
I'm like a bit of emotional blackmail before I make the decision.
No, because you know what I mean. I totally agree, because it's the same case with Alan Smith.
Aye.
No, he's a cracking player, but he's not played enough for me to be all time. You know.
Well, I think because we mentioned the lack of Black being there because of longevity.
I think if we had a substitute bench, we would have Black, Smith, and Porteous sitting on it.
Aye. We'll side with Conrad. I think when he came in.
Sorry, Ali, your team's just been completely decimated there.
No, hold on. He managed to get 6 Rab Mack in. You got the same 3 midfielders. You agreed with Caddo, and you got Blair Henderson when I wasn't sure. So what are we going to complain about here?
Okay.
He's got that sceptical look. If you get to some video, guys, you're going to see it. He's got a really sceptical look on his face. But I think, right, so what we've got for anybody that's listening, if you want to recount, we've got Andrew Stobie in goals. We've got Robbie McIntyre as left centre-half. Joe Mabou as the middle centre-half. And Conrad Ballatoni at right. We have Sir Douglas Garrett left wing-back. We have got Jordan Caddo at right wing-back. Our 3 centre midfielders are John Dunn, Mark Laird and Ian McFarland. And up front, we have Ross Allen and Blair Henderson. I think that is a pretty good team on the whole. Apologies for anybody who's older that we haven't seen as much. There's obviously guys like Ross McNamara who never got mentioned, they maybe should have.
Yeah, I was going to say Gary played as well for a long time.
Gary Jardine played as well. You know, there's loads of guys like that. I think for a lot of us, I suppose, as we started watching, you never really got to know their names. You just got them by numbers. I remember we used to get Player of the Year votes. Jal always used to come up and says, "Doesn't matter if you didn't ken their names, boys. Just put their number down." Right. So that kind of like it was sometimes difficult, really. So from that, I think that's a pretty good team. That's a pretty solid team.
Not bad at all. Yeah. Not bad at all.
I think we've done well. If anybody wants to tweet us on and complain, fire on. I'm half expecting a message for Jar when he listens to this. Go, what the hell you doing? Can I believe you've got him? You're a joke. Which is fair enough. He's seen them. Between him and Alec, they've probably seen more games than anybody else.
I think so.
So I think they'll agree with a lot of them. Probably disagree with some of them, but yeah, that's the nature of anybody putting a best 11. If we all agreed, it'd be pretty boring. Right. So that's something a bit different for you today, listeners. Just to get away from the monotony of not having any football. We'll hopefully come back in a couple of weeks. Before we say that, is there any final point before I round up the show?
Just be good to get somebody on that we could interview, even if it isn't who we want. First anyway. We don't want to let the cat out of the bag with that surprise guest, but maybe it could be somebody else before we get the surprise guest on.
Not a surprise guest. I think we said we were going to get one.
We said we were going to get Jim on. All right, okay, right. That's fine. Maybe if we got somebody else on, I think I said that last time as well. We get to get somebody on that we can have a bit general chat about, just to see their perspective as well as others.
Yep. Ali, anything you want to add?
No, I suppose we better make sure it's not anybody who just left out that first 11 that we try and invite on. So no Danny Handlings or Scott Shepherd's or anything that might else.
Really, we're looking at maybe Blair or Rab. That's about it then, really.
Aye, or Conrad.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not after all. If Conrad's on, maybe I'll not be on. So
the problem with this is that guaranteed Danny's going to read it and he's going to give me absolute pelters on social media. I know he's like. Anyway, yes, right. So as I was about to finish here, we're hopefully going to try and get some interviews. Perhaps unsurprisingly, we did have the chairman booked in, but unsurprisingly, as I say, is because of current circumstances, he's a bit busy. When I think everybody can understand that, it's a bit more important trying to figure out what's going on rather than listening to us dafties. Also, a wee plug for our friend Ash Wilson. His book has now hit the Kindle store. Good Citizen, Bad Citizen. £5. It will cost you not a whole lot of money. That's less than £2 in Edinburgh. You don't need to buy a Kindle to read it. You just need the Kindle app across any device, iOS, Android, whatever tablet or that you use. I've read half it so far. It's really good. It's a lot of positive reviews. So if you could give that a check out, that'd be great. I don't think there's much else to add. As I say, hopefully 2 weeks' time. If we don't have the chairman, we'll try and secure somebody else. If you want to tweet in and complain about our 11, feel free. But apart from that, it's a good night from Mr. Rooney.
Good night. Stay safe, folks.
It's a goodbye from Mr. Monteith.
yeah, goodbye everyone.
It's a goodbye from me, the Right Rev. Goodbye.